Hi, Alan.
Hey, Mark, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yourself?
I'm fantastic. What's going on today?
Oh, well, Alan, I've seen a lot of information recently concerning SPM. I was wondering, would you be able to take me through the product in a little bit more detail, please?
You know I'd love to do that. Let me go ahead and share my screen with you here, Mark. Mark, here we are on the screen. Before we get started with the demonstration, I'm going to guide you in a walkthrough through that value add strategy module. But I think it's important that we take some perspective as we walk through that journey about what persona that we're talking about. Here, it's going to be one as a portfolio manager, but you should understand that whether you call it a strategic planner, an Epic owner, a member of the product management team, or even a member of the EPMO, it's the individual at the higher level of the organization where those are that are involved in those meetings are making decisions about the initiatives that are aligned to the organization's strategy. And these folks are responsible for oversight, grooming of those initiatives, things that are coming into the funnel, and preparing for that decision-making stop-start conversation. They're particularly focused, in our case, on portfolio epics. And for that, we're looking at this value add strategy slice of this graphic. And the key things that are going on during this conversations are talking about business objectives, key results or KPIs, the execution of those KPIs and performance, strategy alignment, and prioritization. Does that make sense?
It does indeed, thank you.
Okay, Mark, as we move away from that slide, now we're looking at the initial homepage of the Value Edge platform. So let's get started. The micro-focus value edge strategy piece, which we're talking about today, is actually built into the portfolio and strategy subsection. So let's go ahead and select that. That'll navigate us directly to my portfolios, but you have access just a couple of clicks away to all of the portfolios in the entire enterprise. The things that we're focused on for today's conversation, however, are the things that are in my portfolio. So we're going to navigate there first. Let's talk a little bit about what we're looking at here. This is a set of pre-fabricated, pre-configured dashboard pages that are set off by two different types of dashboards. These products that you're seeing that are highlighted on the screen, particularly in this first dashboard card strategy contribution by product, include the product value streams themselves, as well as the strategic themes that they're aligned to. So they inherit that value stream relationship and the hierarchy with them as they go. And so that backwards traceability as they're moving through their life cycle throughout the system is maintained. So on the left-hand side, I'm just going to give us a little extra real estate here by dragging that screen. As I'm selecting in this hierarchy to lower levels, in this case, we'll select the app dev, you'll notice that the widget information will change as we're doing that. So we're looking at context-sensitive dashboards, and those two different types of portfolios that I talked about include the portfolio for products. As I hover over that, a product represents a value stream. So if we looked at the product here for PPM, you would see a set of dashboard elements that are aligned to a single product. And as I roll up in that context sensitive, if we go all the way back to the top, you'll see the widgets that will change that will include now a consolidation of all of the information in that portfolio.
So, Alan, could I just ask, the hierarchy on the left-hand side, I presume that's not fixed and can be configured for each of our customers?
Absolutely, Mark. We realize that each of our customers are going to have a unique set of configuration, and it's going to be according to the way their products and their businesses are set up. In relation to that, if we were a bank, for example, these value streams might be consumer banking or mortgage lending. In other business silos, they could also be titled, if it was an insurance company, claims processing, or even lab testing.
Perfect, thank you.
So Mark, let's keep talking about these different dashboards that we're looking at. Let's look at some of the widgets that are on the screen that you're looking at here. At the highest level, let's go ahead and expand this strategy contribution by product. When we do that, this is an example of a Sankey diagram. On the left-hand side, you have the products that are represented in this case by our Octane product, our Load Runner family, and our PPM product. And then on the right-hand side, you have the strategic themes that each of those supports. And their graphic, if I got my cursor out of the way here, their graphic would indicate how on the left-hand side, they're aligned with those objects on the right-hand side. So you see that Octane, for example, is aligned with, in this case, two strategic themes.
Can I just ask, Alan, there's some numbers under each of those. What do they mean?
Absolutely. Because we're in an environment where traditionally financials will be super important, in our case, because we're working with epics, we have taken the stance that the story points are sort of that unit of measure. So from an impact level, from a what are my teams working on, the numbers that you see there are actually the story points. So in this case, the ALM Octane has 40 story points. If we look at the same unit of measure aligned, we can see that the delight customers is taking up some 240 story points, and the grow the business is taking up some 140. So that same number, I'm just going to close the Sankey mark and show that same number also will show up as an important flag number on a lot of the dashboard portals that you see there on the screen. And as we see those story points on the screen, notice also this perceived value number that's sort of called out here, 232 in this mixed consolidated view. That perceived value is interesting because in our environment, we have the idea of forecasting your story points. And so we can use a field that we've actually in the planning phases. You can perceive, you can estimate what the value would be of the objects that you're managing in those portfolio epics. And so we have this weighted criteria approach that we have, and we'll see that at the end of our demo today. There's a whole set of fields, and they're weighted descriptive fields that will actually help you drive that perceived value. As we continue forward, the other thing that I want to just highlight here, this is a combined view of a strategic set of products. Let's look at one individual product in its own, and I just want to highlight this bubble product map for you. And I'm going to change just the scale of the view just a little bit because I want to have all those elements displayed on the screen at the same time. So we're looking at the value rating and the risk rating, the plotting of these graphics that are on the screen, and we're looking at this ATS pilot, Germany and France element. What you have here is the ability to create for yourself a prioritization matrix, and we have both value, which are those positive things that are introduced by the object, and risk, which are the potential negative things that would also be introduced. And so if you imagine a four-square plotted area where the upper left-hand would be those things that have very low value and very low risk and very high value. Likewise, in contrast, those objects that would have a high risk and a low value, these objects would be can be considered or called in the industry sometimes your best bets, and those are the things that are going to be, safe bets, going to be introducing a lot of value but not introducing a lot of risk to the organization. And you would greenlight these things, where in contrast, those things would drop below this high risky quadrant. Those would really be things that you would either have to reevaluate, maybe re-examine, or those things that the organization would probably not agree to go forward and invest in. Does that make sense, Mark?
Yeah, no, it's very much so. So that's similar to the risk and value ratings we would see in PPM.
Not only similar, nearly identical, and you'll see that as we move forward, that from a PPM perspective, this is functionality that's been in our PPM Classic product for a long time. Okay, Mark, let's go ahead and transition from a conversation about the product dashboards to one of strategy. I'm going to go to the top of this set of portfolios, and I'm going to highlight that strategy tab and increase the font just a bit to make it easier for us both to read. This should look super familiar in the PPM space that have seen the strategy tab and the portfolio module before. When you see both the section for strategic themes and the business goals that are related to those strategic themes. As I select grow business, for example, that'll highlight the 3 business goals and their associated KPIs, which show a trend chart to help with the clearly visible performance status.
So could I just ask there, Alan, because presumably
yeah.
this is the same as the strategy tab in PPM. So is there a common code base associated to this?
That is exactly what is associated with this. So as they're releasing enhancements, making fixes, and making additional feature functions to the PPM platform, not only is that code affected for PPM, but also for the SPM module built into Value Edge. And that's what it's called. It's called a common code base.
Perfect. Thank you.
So as we're looking at the view here of those different strategic themes, they are managed either at a global level or from a local level. And I just want to point out that when we're looking at that, you have the ability of adding things from a global set of strategic themes or adding a new strategic theme at this local portfolio level. And you have the ability to do that and the flexibility to do that, which is a distinctive product differentiator. That global strategic theme and the differentiating metrics that are provided include the ability to display that historical information, and the information can be manually entered and managed here within the platform.
So Alan, what if a customer already manages those details in an external system? Do they need to update them in here as well?
No, as far as manually, they don't. What they can do at that point is they can connect the systems. They can be updated externally and continue to be managed externally, and we can use connectors or a bed of APIs that are ready to go in the platform. So no need to update them in 2 places. We can just pull that information directly into the system.
Well, that makes life a lot easier.
So Mark, I think we've got a good idea of what it looks like on the strategy tab. Let's go ahead and slide into that third and last tab, the contents tab, which is really where we start talking about sharing the multiple portfolio views. And this is how we communicate how the value is measured in an easy way.
Well, what do you mean easy way, Alan?
It's a great question. And you'll notice some of our literature talking about VSM the easy way. To me, as a practitioner of PPM and this strategy space, when I think about what doing things easier might culminate, it would include 2 things. The first is we have a series of workshops that we have planned for our customers at the front end of implementing this solution. And part of those workshop conversations would be about what products are managed as value streams and how they would align to a set of strategic folders or portfolio sets. And secondly, what will be easy for me to implement as an IT practitioner is if there are templates involved. And in our strategy subset, we've got a couple of different areas where templates, the request type template for portfolio epics and the template of the workflow are already pre-baked. They're already prescriptive and ready to be consumed for our customers. So in that way, Mark, I think we make things a lot easier for our customers to adopt this new way of managing and running their business. So this is portfolio management. Each of these has portfolio epics, and we're looking at, when I say each of these, I mean these portfolios that you see here listed on the left-hand side. The view, and there are 4 views that you're looking at. This is the list view. It's a very simplistic view where the elements on the right-hand side align with the different fields that are available in that request type. Forecasted cost, for example, the guardrail information, the strategic theme. In this view, you have the ability in certain fields to dynamically modify the field with a double click. And so this is an example of a field where you can modify that information on the fly. The other view is one of a hierarchy. I'm at the top of this tree of information. And so the hierarchy view will actually show you the contents of these different portfolios, those portfolio contents, and where they're positioned in this hierarchy. This is also the same view where, based on if I navigate down to a lower level, in this hierarchy view, I have the ability also to do things like move, remove, and change the location. This is sort of my management view. If I wanted to change the location of a specific portfolio or a portfolio epic in the hierarchy, this is the view to make those changes. So this third view that we're looking at, or it's referred to as the board view or the Kanban board view, is just a way of really plotting based on the state or the status that the work is in across those different channels. This is also a view where dragging and dropping based on the criteria is available. As if we scroll down, you'll see that it's being grouped by the strategic theme. At the highest level, it will snap that information. But you'll see that there are 3 cards, and each of these cards represents an individual entity, or in our case, a strategic, or excuse me, a portfolio epic. And you see key information about the portfolio epic in this view, and that's the Kanban view that we're looking at. The last view that we want to talk about is the roadmap view. Now, I've applied favorites to this, and you can create favorite views. There's a way of adding a favorite and creating both a default and a view for your own needs. Now, I've created one called Roadmap by Value Stream Product, which looks at this information plotted in this roadmap view by the products that are in this entire organizational chart here, the hierarchy that we're looking at. We've got 3 products that have portfolio epics aligned to them, and you're looking at this plotted in time. So from the left to the right, you have the full breadth and the system date, and that dotted red line is the current system date. You have all that information displayed there. With individual epics, and their colorization is also the strategic theme.
I think that's probably my favorite view, Alan. And I think for a lot of customers as well, but probably because it represents a more traditional portfolio or project type perspective of the world.
Indeed. And what we're looking at here is one of the required views that we did for one of the analyst conversations. So on the left-hand side, you get the name of that product or the value stream. And on the right-hand side are the rest of that Gantt kind of view that we're looking at. You've plotted all of the things that you're planning to do for that calendar year in the same consolidated view. It's a very good point. So Mark, at this point, let's dig all the way down into the details. The individual portfolio epic, the one there on the screen, customer dynamics. Let's go ahead and highlight that and dig into the details. Now, as this loads, Mark, does this look familiar?
Very much so, Alan. That's a PPM request type if ever I've seen one.
Indeed. So very common and very familiar territory for any PPM customer of ours. As we're looking at the screen, just notice a few things. The layout of the fields and the title of the fields, this is coming from very prescriptive SAFe 5.x framework information. We've leveraged the business case and we've put those fields, the elements of the fields and the behavior of the fields, we've pre-coded that. This would be an example of the templates that I was talking about, because in this context, we don't want to really reinvent the wheel. We know how to, to fashion a portfolio epic. We're using the standards from that SAFe framework space. And so in here, we've got a few key fields that will literally digitize information's beginning, expected starts, and expected end dates, associations with guardrails and business types and epic types that we're talking about here. As we scroll down, other information that we've talked about that were showing to us in fields earlier and displayed in dashboards, perceived value, that 43-digit information is actually coming from this comparison matrix, that weighted comparison matrix that I discussed earlier. These fields have descriptions but also have weighted values. So as I'm changing, it's very subtle. It was 43 just a few seconds ago. But that 58 is being driven by those weighted values that are parts of these descriptions, both in the value ratings section and in the risk ratings section. And so that information is driven from those fields. And as I scroll down, we'll also highlight the fact that we have a workflow that's underpinning and determining the governance process, the approval process, the life cycle of this portfolio epic as it's moving through its stage gates. Let's go ahead. I made a few changes to the request, so I'm going to save those changes. And then I'm going to move this request through a couple of the next phases. So we're going from the reviewing to the analyzing phase. We're going to approve through the analyzing phase and move into the portfolio backlog phase, which is really moving things down into the portfolio life cycle. It's prompting us now for some key information that's downstream, because what we're doing at this point is we're handing off to the downstream Agile module, whether that be a module that's built in our own framework in the tool or whether we're integrated through another solution like an Agile framework of another vendor type. But it's asking us the name of the instance that we're creating that. And in this case, we've only got a single instance. It's this SPM configuration instance. And then it's asking us what project, because we are able to support multiple parallel running projects, workspaces they're also termed in other products. We select the workspace that we're interested in. I think I've got a workspace that begins with my name, and here is that workspace. And then what entity type. And so we have the idea of both a portfolio epic and a shared epic. The shared epic can be expressed across workspaces, and that's something that actually we're working with the architects of the solution to further qualify and how that will work. But in this particular example, we're going to create an epic that's specific to my workspace, and we're going to continue the workflow action. All of the handoffs, all of the creation of the downstream entities is occurring right now. As I scroll down, there's a new section that is displayed called Agile Integration that has both a hyperlink to that newly created entity downstream and the information here if I want to continue to synchronize changes that I make to this request and those things be synchronized to the downstream Agile. I can toggle that on and off. I'm going to quickly highlight that entity hyperlink. It's going to log into the same solution. Notice we're still logged into Value Edge, but now we're actually in the Agile module. You see who the owner is and who created the request, and then who, in this case, this customer dynamics is now part of a detail tab where you can further decomposition that work. And so in this case, because it's part of a tree, I'm just going to select the Agile module or the Agile backlog, and you'll see that customer dynamics as an entry in that module, and you can further express out those lower fledgling requests, the features, the backlog items, the tests associated with it, etc. But I'll tell you, this kind of is touching in another area of the Value Edge solution and kind of outside the bounds of our strategy module. But I just wanted to show you where that request was now created as a result of our workflow.
That's fantastic, Alan. So I can now see that I can capture my strategy, I can define my structure, understand my products, flesh out the epics, and then send those epics into the Agile modules once I've decided which ones I'm going to work on, and allow the rest of the business to work on those and deliver the value back to the business.
Indeed, Mark.
Thank you then, Alan, for your time.